Hi guys, welcome back. Let's talk about warm-ups and what are they good for? I mean, absolutely nothing. That's a bit harsh, but let's look at the positives, the negatives, and some of the grey areas with warm-ups. I don't really want to review individual games because I think you just can't draw enough from them. So firstly, what are the positives out of warm-ups? Well, combinations need time. You want centre partnerships to gel, front rows, back rows, all that sort of thing, especially say in the northern hemisphere where it's been the off season and they're just coming back. Clearly some sort of warm-up games to get those combinations gelling is very important. Sure, you can do a lot in training, you can do competitive stuff in training, but it's not quite the same as a fully competitive physical international game. You can run through your basic structures, your unit plays, some of your unit plays, for example, scrummaging, you can work with quite, full on, defensive alignments, absolutely, but there is a limit, we'll come to that. And another thing warm-up games do is you can use them as a trial essentially. They're just a competitive trial to really compare players against each other. And it's easier to see differences under pressure in an international than at training. So yeah, that's one way you do it. Match fitness. Matches are great ways of getting fit for matches. So if you play a couple of warm-up games, that's just the icing on the cake with the fitness work you're doing. And we'll come back to fitness in some of the drawbacks. And you can see individual skills on display, high ball, tackling, defensive alignment, things like that, communication. You will be able to pick those things up. So clearly warm-up games are useful in some ways. And I've put some of the warm-up results on the side of the screen there just to have a look, but how much can you read into those results? Well, there's problems. The fitness cycle, the stage of fitness that a team's at is quite important. There were suggestions that Wales potentially, when they lost to England, were in the middle of a block of hardcore fitness, and they were always going to suffer, pure peak performance wise because of that. But the positive is you get that extra match fitness in your legs, just like an elongated fitness training session. Maybe England were fresher and that could explain some of the difference in what we saw. Maybe not, but we just don't know what stage of the fitness cycle these teams are in. Also, plays. We're not going to see a lot of the really cool attacking plays and some of the more finer tactical plays in these warm-up games because you don't want to show the opposition what you're planning. These moves you might only pull out once or twice a whole tournament. So we really maybe just be seeing very basic structures, defensive alignments, some basic attacking shapes. And it can look a little bit limited, and then you read into who's looking boring, who's looking exciting, and it may be a bit warped that way. And also, maybe, dare I say, the main focus of some of these matches for coaches especially isn't winning, it's performance and looking at all these shapes. So when a team is focused on performing in individual performances, unit performances, and they're not thinking about the winning so much, matches become a little less, solid to read into. And then of course some teams have second choice players who are quite a way below their first choice players. So when they play a second choice team, it looks a lot significantly worse than what you'd expect. Maybe England's performance is quite consistent between their first and second choice players because they've got so many players to choose from. The level doesn't dip so much. Other sides with less players, it may dip more. So it really depends on what team they are putting out, how strong actually is that team, stages of fitness, all these sorts of things. So very hard to read into performances. I mean, looking at some of those performances on the side, you would say that South Africa are in a good spot. They're on the way up, they're playing really, really well. You'd say, and they've probably improved their chances of winning the World Cup. I think that's fair to say. How much? We're not quite sure. Australia, from a very poor starting block last year, have looked like they've recaptured some of their mojo. They're starting to fire, they're looking dangerous, playing their exciting, expansive, broken field game very well. Australians always seem to step up for when it matters in the World Cup. Sometimes it can fall apart in between. But yeah, you'd say their chances have improved slightly. Wales versus England, like I said, it's hard to read into that. I'd say they're probably still pretty much even as I had them before. Ireland's just had that one warm-up with the extras, if you like, which was, yeah. But it brings me nicely into the negatives. So in that Ireland match, Joey Carberry looks like he picked up quite a nasty injury. And you look at playing that match versus losing Joey Carberry for a World Cup, which is more important? I don't know. Losing Brodie Retallick, how important is that? Anscombe, maybe if he's out of the World Cup, sure they've got bigger, but then is the backup not quite as good? So it's how many matches you play versus the risk of injury. It's obviously going to go up the more matches you play, and it looks like commercialism has creeped into this, and they're playing too many warm-up matches. 4's too many. And even Gatland himself, good old Gatland straight talking, said as much. 4's too many. I didn't want 4. It wasn't my choice. You need to make money. Home unions, say like the RFU, the WRU, want to cash in on the World Cup. It's in Japan, so they can't, so they can only do it in these warm-up matches. So they want to play England home and away, so each team gets their home wedge of money, and it results, getting this money in results in too many warm-up matches. So that's a problem with warm-up matches. The commercial aspect comes in and detracts from the actual performance, to be honest. And if you think about it, more matches, if you get away without major injuries, fine, but there's still recovery time. You have to recover, so you can't go straight back into your hard training. You have to let the body recover, especially with bumps and bruises of the physicality. So it can muck up, if you like, the training blocks. And then you're going to have to split the squad, aren't you? If a team's preparing for one match, then the other half of the squad might be carrying on with hardcore training and then preparing as the other team goes back into training, so you can get out of kilter. So warm-up matches can be a real pain in the bum as well as a necessity as well. And to finish with, do they devalue internationals? They're exciting games, some of them, but does it devalue, the value of winning that game? I would argue yes. The Rugby Championship, South Africa deserve to win it, but is it slightly devalued than a normal Rugby Championship? I'd say possibly. I'd like to know your opinions on that. So anyway, roll on the World Cup. Warm-up matches, what are they good for? Well, some things, but maybe not everything. Be careful what you read into them. Please comment below on warm-up matches. How many pros and cons? Do you like them? And until next time, I will see you then.